Those who have pursued the unseen were seen as cursed. Sometimes they were. More often, they were victims of a cruel church, a ruthless ruling class, and ignorant minds. We, however, live in a different age. Do not fear, seeker of the unseen. Today is a new dawn. The dawn of the Dragon Djinn.
Hello, my name is Aristomenes and welcome to Dragon Djinn Alchemy. This is the third video in an open-ended series of discourses on the subject, which includes a lot of other occult topics such as Kabbalah, even Eastern occult topics like yoga, Tantra, topics regarding Taoist or alchemy or Neikung, because all of these subjects have common elements. They interweave together and they are used in the application of Dragon Djinn alchemy. We'll talk maybe about grimoires or about magical symbols, about logocentric occultism, which is essentially the power of an alphabet, the power of the spoken word, the power of the written word, and we'll tie all these things together back into Dragon Djinn alchemy. Before I continue to the main topic, which will involve the reason why anybody would want to do Dragon Djinn alchemy, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we discussed in previous videos. There were only 2 videos, but I just want to do a brief recap. Now, the main thing that I wanted to convey is the analogy of the flame, the sacred flame and the lamp. When we look at Dragon Djinn alchemy, the central theme, the central technique we use, or basically resource, central symbol resource, is the Goetia, the first book of the Lesser Key of Solomon. It's not the only one. However, this one is based, it's based on the legend of the jinn, or spirits. Now in Christianity, when they recount the legend of Solomon building the temple, they say he used demons. In Islam, they say he used jinn. So I'd like to go with the Islamic metaphor because it is far more, let's say, functional occult-wise. Let's put it this way. Again, we have the metaphor of the flame, and I'm going to keep getting back to this because it's central. An angel is the light. The jinn is the heat in the form of the flame. The lamp itself holds a fuel, let's say oil, which is the energy, the life force that the human being contributes or can draw from the environment, because it's not exclusive to the human being. And then the container, which is the human body, which includes the subtle body, which includes the mental body, which includes the wisdom body, and the physical body. All of these dynamics of embodiment. So this isn't really a dualistic system where you have body separate from spirit. All these are elements of the same dynamic. Thus, on the one hand, occultists do distinguish between, these spirits or jinn or whatever you want to call them are separate beings. On the other hand, we do encounter them within our own being. We encounter the patterns within our own being. So there is a self-similarity, a mystical self-similarity between the jinn, the spirits, and the counterpart of the flame in the human being. Just as there is a self-similarity between the angels or the angelic spirits and the counterpart, the image and likeness of the divine spirit, as monotheistic religions tell us. So this is why this is an important metaphor. It's like a summary of a lot of things that we will encounter in Dragon Djinn alchemy. Now, it's a system of cultivation that can be applied as a system of conjuring as well. So Dragon Djinn alchemy, to clarify, is not just a system of cultivation, but before you go into the conjuring application, let's put it this way, and I'm going to get into the subject a little later. I mean, this isn't just about a simple answer to a question of why would I want to do Dragon Djinn alchemy? What's it going to get me materially? Fame, fortune, whatever, you know. And why would I want to do cultivation? Is it just to be enlightened? Why would I want to be enlightened? You know, what is that? The mystic would see it one way, and there are different forms of mysticism. I mean, there's mysticism that pertains to escaping from the material into the spiritual, into spiritual unity, either dying physically or waiting your natural physical death in order to attain final liberation, as it were. And then there is a transformation here on earth that legend says is meant to heal the planet, is meant to integrate, to redeem creation, as it were. It's not a New Age concept. This is found in Kabbalah, and in some ways it's found in Neo-Hinduist philosophy, the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo, for example, that says transformation occurs on earth. Sri Aurobindo was an Indian yogi who lived between 1872 and 1950. He played an integral part in the Indian Revolution. Now, this doesn't seem to have much to be aligned with our topic. However, it is, because our topic is extensive. Now, I'm going to get into cultivation dynamics. The center is, again, the Goetia. But the Goetia has many extensions, many implications that regular grimoires, medieval Renaissance grimoires, even Goetic magic, more ancient Goetic magic, it implies these things, I think. In fact, it all goes down to shamanism. And shamanism is not a clear-cut system so much. But you might say that it is more than what Renaissance conjuring became. Let's put it this way. I'm not going to talk about shamanism in this discourse right now, but I will say that this system is driven by interacting with the elements of the system. Basically, it is self-driven. It isn't just, okay, somebody's done scholarship or even had an epiphany and laid certain inspirations down, certain things that they believe are true, and practiced them or whatever. That's part of it. But a lot of it is the system itself awakens the jinn. You come into communion with the jinn. You develop a relationship with the jinn, shall we say. This relationship then allows the jinn to awaken self-similar patterns, self-similar vibrations in your own being. Now that is cultivation. Those self-similar vibrations allow you to practice with their assistance, with their amplification, some of the offices that pertain to them, if not all of them. Everybody's different, and it doesn't happen instantaneously. You don't say, give me the power, or I'm going to burn you in hell because I'm a human being and a priest of God, and blah, blah, blah. You do say that, okay, now we are both going to benefit from this. You know, I get the ability that you have to awaken the ability that is latent within me. This draws on more life force to feed the ability. The life force then also feeds me, which awakens further ability, and in fact has a healing effect on my own psyche. You don't just awaken the jinn. The jinn themselves are beings that are incomplete, you might say, or specialized. The thing with the human template, and why it's not just that God created humans according to these religious, texts, and everybody has to worship them, all the other beings have to worship them, whatever. Human beings have a spiritual component, they have a life force component, they have a jinn type component, they have a physical component. They are complex, and they basically represent a nexus that interacts with the rest of creation. Hence, mystics will tell you that the human embodiment is a microcosm of the macrocosmic universe, of macrocosmic or whole environmental creation. Now, the jinn, however, embody a part of that. Angels embody a part of that. For all of their power and specialization, they cannot really embody anything else, Human beings can embody all of the, and should, and to be balanced. The same thing is, if you look at occultism and they speak of the elements, the human being attracts elementals because they represent the promise of balance between all the elements. So an elemental from the water, for example, will be attracted to a human being because they sense water element within the human being, connect with them, but then they can come into an experience of kind of witnessing and experiencing what it's like to be balanced, what it's like to have access to far more than you are, what it's like to be more than what you currently are, what it's like to evolve. And thus this spurs a kind of evolution. So before I answer the question, what do we get out of the system, let me tell you that the entities dealing with human beings also get something out of the system, out of the interaction, because nothing is for free. And so threats are only gonna lead you into a hostile type of relationship. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's gonna be problematic. You cannot use, you can use your faith, you can use your this, your that, all of your power to force a being to work with you under the presumption that this being is evil and has to be controlled. You could also play divide and conquer tactics by taking an angelic being and pitting it against the jinn. And so you pit the light against the flame, and you create a conflict, and you become the arbiter of that conflict, essentially. And even the angelic dynamics, interacting with angels, is not as easy as someone would think. Oh, please come down. Angels will not serve people. They have to. Nothing's for free, shall we say. But the premises are different there. It depends also, on the belief system. It's not like, okay, a belief system is everything. However, your key to reality is how you view reality. What your stance is with respect to reality. That's why I talk about the stance. I mean, many people will say beliefs are bullshit, don't have beliefs, be free of beliefs. I consider that, beliefs are part of our nature. I mean, the thing is, you will evaluate something. You will not be a blank slate completely. And even that's a belief. I mean, a stance is your presence. Eliminating your presence, that's nihilism, that's negation, and that's delusion. You're always there. You're present. Even if you're not physically there, you're there. Even if you aren't aware that you're there, you're there. There is no such thing as non-existence. There is potentiality of existence. What we call the void in occultism or mysticism is not nothingness. It is no thing. There is no thing there. No thing. T-H-I-N-G. It is not nothingness. However, you may say, again, mystically speaking, and I'm kind of getting very theoretical and abstract here, but I just want to get this out, that the primary forces of existence are yes, which is the affirmation of being, and that is everything we hold as good in a way. And we're not talking about overkill or over-reproduction or cancer or anything like that, because we're talking about just pure ecstatic affirmation of being. And then you have the negation of being, which isn't just falling asleep. This is tearing fucking something out of existence. No. When somebody tears you down and calls you stupid or whatever, or, insults you and pushes you and demeans you, they negate, in a sense, they negate your presence. And that's why it hurts so much. Betrayal hurts. It negates your capacity to love, It's a denial of it. So these two forces come into play. Again, one of the reasons I'm expressing this here in this video, and will express it in others, is to be able to get away from this dynamic of morality, good and evil, without resorting to the opposite pole of immorality or even amorality, which basically is desensitization, to metamorality. Getting beyond morality is not being amoral, in my opinion. It's moving into a more evolved presence, something that works better, than ethics. In occultism, ethics can easily be manipulated. So we're talking about something more natural in a sense, your stance, something for which any occultist or anyone who's cultivating their potential needs to take responsibility for. I'd like to talk again about the jinn themselves to continue this discourse, even though officially this is about why would I want to do Dragon Djinn alchemy. Well, in this case, the jinn are the power of the system. They absorb life force, they borrow your life force, and they have, and that is not a debilitating thing. It actually encourages you. It's not vampirism. It encourages you to absorb more life force from the environment, from the planet, and circulate it, because it's a circulatory thing. You give them your life force, you give them your commitment, to your own, shall we say, evolution, which is essentially a commitment to the evolution of the planet, to the evolution of every natural being, beyond their limitations toward greater wholeness. We'll get more on the subject of wholeness as we develop the myth of Solomon. But for now, I'd like to just say that the jinn are combined with an angelic dynamic that is essentially not angels coming down. What it is a portion of a greater light of, well, in Kabbalistic literature they call it, or many people think it's Metatron. This is the angel of, and I talked about this in the first video, the angel of the book of Moses, of Exodus, the presence, the light that came down and protected the Israelites from the forces of Egypt. So you might call this a mystical allegory where this presence essentially will protect you from the forces of the secular force, the forces of the world, the mundane forces, and demonic forces, you might call it, for lack of a better word, but not the jinn themselves. And this is funny because you can actually take this presence and spread it around into 72 quanta, because it forms a circle. A circle is basically a symbol of wholeness, a symbol of completion. It goes round, it completes itself. It's a perfect distance between the same distance. Every point has the same different distance from the center. So it symbolizes the perspective of every perfected element in creation from the divine center that gave it birth, you might say, manifested it. So in a sense, when you have this presence forming a circle around you, your center, the soul of you, it is part of the divine light in a way, but it's also part of your greater, deeper being. You are more than what you appear to be. That's another premise. So we're cultivating something that's in potential within us. We're not creating a new thing out of nothing. So this presence essentially can be identified in terms of 72 aspects. Probably, that's not arbitrary, but it's also not fixed. But 72 is a good number. It's considered a sacred number, a multiple of 8 times 9, a kind of balance between the dynamism of the number 9 and the stability of the number 8. And this number, 5 times 72 is 360, which is another full circle number. So you might say, in order to transduce the circle unto man, whose number is 5, you take the Vitruvian man, the head, the arms, and the 2 legs, the 5 points, another symbol, and it's one way to read occultism. It's a called Hermetic, from the god Hermes, the god of knowledge, the god of communication, the god of transcending boundaries, or moving from one state to another state. He's also the god that allegedly is the god of merchants. Exchanging energy, exchanging goods for currency, communicating back and forth. It's the god of crossovers. The word comes from a Greek root, I think, that means boundary. So in any case, this presence that we can symbolize with the circle, which is the circle also of the zodiac in the macrocosm surrounding the earth, the ecliptic, as they call it astronomically and astrologically. Now this circle essentially is divided in 72 parts and is transduced into the human microcosm by dividing 360 by 5, And so hence we have 72. That's my interpretation. I mean, it's just something, a reference. Be that as it may, if you collect 72 jinn and correspond each of the jinn to one of the 72 parts, then essentially what happens? Well, you have a correspondence of a certain light, a certain consciousness with the jinn. And so does this mean there's an angel going around harassing the jinn? No, because the letters don't really make an angelic being. They make a core essence that we can elaborate as an angelic being by adding more letters. You know, that's what they did with the traditional method of establishing 72 angels, separate angels from these beings, and associating each one with a point of the ecliptic. I guess 5 degrees or something like that. But in any case, when you do that, you take the jinn that is a force that can tend to become more subconscious than conscious. It can, shall we say, if you're a person who, you know, has neurosis and whatever, and you connect with the jinn may feed upon those and interact with you in a way, or if you mistreat the jinn, or if there's anything that you're not right with yourself, you know, if you're not prepared, let's put it that way, if you don't petition the jinn rightly, if it doesn't get the message from you, you know, if you can't establish a working relationship, you're in for a lot of hurt. Maybe a little stress, maybe a lot of stress, maybe hurt. You know, it depends on the situation. But if the jinn can somehow form a relationship with your own higher consciousness, the higher consciousness that you are still in the process of cultivating, or have only just begun cultivating, or even before you just begun cultivating it, part of the cultivation actually is connecting that higher consciousness with the jinn. Then the jinn is crowned. The jinn is anointed, let's put it that way. You know, these are my terms. Well, the words aren't mine, but I'm describing this. I haven't read this anywhere. You know, it's not like, oh, who's the one, who's the authority behind this? No, this is something I've been practicing, and the jinn have been communicating that yes, this is viable, and it works, and we agree to it. So this is what I'm presenting, I'm sharing. So there are 72 three-letter vibrations that are like a crown. Now, if you look at certain images of, you know, from the court jester who represents wisdom, to certain images of the devil with the 3 horns, to certain images like the fleur-de-lis, which represents royalty, enlightened royalty, you have the image of a central path going out of the crown and 2 paths that are on the side. So you have the 2 brain hemispheres, and Eastern mysticism, Eastern yoga talks about these things. The Ida, the Pingala, the Shushumna, however they pronounce it, but the central path, the right path, and the left path that comes out the top of the head. Now, nobody's saying that, well, the Westerners knew about this and they also described it, but if mystical physiology, if occult physiology is actually what you might call, I'm just checking the time there, if occult physiology is a human thing, it's not something made up, it's not a cultural thing, it's not a doctrinal thing. Think about this. Then any human being anywhere on the planet who is open enough, who is perceptive enough, who is in tune enough, will perceive the implications of occult physiology just like they can perceive their physical physiology, their material physiology. They might give different names to it, but the understanding, the patterns will be identifiable, and these patterns can be viewed as archetypes. So you have the archetype of the crown with 3 horns, or the devil who came from a pagan dynamic of wisdom, you know, of the pagan god of the earth, where the horns were considered connections to divinity, you know, and the horns weren't just 2 horns going off to the side, you know, like the lunar crescent, that's one, but then you also had a central horn, a kind of union, you might say, of aspects, of facets of the channeling of power. So many systems essentially describe the dynamic of cultivation and wholeness and awakening related to the union of the forces of heaven and earth. the merger, the mating of heaven and earth. So these things are all connected with the topic here. It's not really separate. I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but it's unavoidable to discuss these things as you discuss them. And what does this have to do with what I can get from the system? Well, the first thing I get, there's three levels. I'm going to talk about these three levels in the next, in a little bit. But these three, what you gain is not just one thing. Before you get to the mythic level of empowerment, it's important to pass, you can't avoid passing through certain stages. You can't just go there. It's like winning the lottery and then ending up more in debt than you ever were, by just spending it or having people, come and seduce you for your money and losing everything and being miserable and not knowing who your friends really are. So you won the lottery and it turns into a curse. And many people would say, no, just give me the lottery, who cares? Yeah, you say that now because you're lacking. But if, on the other hand, you cultivate a certain maturity and you have a purpose and, you actually can learn to manage the money and enjoy your life and actually you're not so vulnerable, you strengthen your own integrity, then you have a good chance of turning that money into more money and maintaining your prosperity. Otherwise, poof, it goes out the window. Unless you have a good relationship with the concept of wealth, as a principle, you might say, of life, then it will go out the window. And I believe that one of the problems with modern occultism is the issue of material wealth. And another thing is that, we live in a world where there's a large population of human beings. There's a large percentage of human beings are relatively affluent, more affluent than they were in the past. Maybe, they're suffering from, the artificiality of our culture and stuff. But at the same time, there's greater education in some things, greater misinformation in other things, I guess, greater delusion in many things. But the point is that human beings are more aware now, more thoughtful, more thinking, more in communication, if anything, for better or worse. So if I manifest, if I resonate, vibrate, expend the energy of getting wealthy, then other people have the means to do so as well, even if it's just their own will. And that interconnect, there's competition. It's almost like we're fighting for the same little pile of goodies. And, it's a lot harder when that happens. Plus, we live in a society that's still striated. There are the haves and the have-nots. So the haves are not just a bunch of, idiots or ignorant people who, it's important for them to stay wealthy, to stay powerful. So they're going to have access to resources and information that the have-nots do not have. So you're not going to say, occultism, why shouldn't you just be wealthy? There's another reason for that. Well, because if I were wealthy, then I'd have to sit there and fight for it constantly, or I'd have to sell out to a system that I don't believe in, on the other hand. Or I'd have to forget about all the other things, because cultivation opened me up to recognize that there's other things besides material wealth that are very, very important. Not that material well-being and wealth are not important, especially well-being. But the thing is, what occultism will give you is what you need to keep going. And you will see that as you keep going, there are goals that may include material prosperity, but that are not limited to it. I'd like to talk about the three levels of the system to be able to, Dragon Djinn alchemy, to be able to convey to anybody interested out there what you might get out of this. Now, traditionally, when you deal with summoning, when you petition gods and then you summon them or summon jinn, you basically, each of them has a certain, or angels or whatever it is, each of them has certain offices or powers or specialties. And you say, okay, well, this one is the one that's going to give me wealth, so I'll tap into them, connect with them, worship them, give myself to them, do whatever, offer, sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. And in return, they will give me something. So it's an exchange. In the Old Testament, they called it a covenant. You God comes down to the people and says, you will worship me, you will listen to me, you will obey my commandments, and in turn I will give you all of this land, and then you'll be fruitful and have all the kids you want, and it'll be a land of milk and honey, and blah, blah, blah. Prosperity. Essentially, it was a deal. It wasn't a mystical experience. The mystical experience may have been the underpinning of the deal, but essentially it was an exchange. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but then every time the Old Testament peoples got, the Jews got punished, they were punished essentially for breach of contract. And the deal may have been made by a patriarch, but then all the people, all the others were descendants of this patriarch in some way. The extended family, the servants, all of this, people by marriage, it was a blood pact. So you break a blood pact, that's not a good thing. So that's the whole thing of blasphemy. Now, you cannot apply this to Christianity, really. Allegedly, the baptism is an equivalent. You're essentially forging a covenant. But, a child is too young to decide if they really want to do that. But then again, the way Christianity, or fundamentalist Christianity states it, is that if you don't forge this covenant, if you don't have God on your side, you're going to go to hell and be punished. And not even punished, it's just evil out there. And if you don't do it, the evil ones are going to torture you. So you need to be, with God and obey the commandments for protection. So I'm not saying this to bash religion, although it's not a pleasant picture in my view. I'm saying this to show you that there's an occult basis even for all of this, and it's even beyond an occult basis. It occurs in nature. Tit for tat, nothing is for free. And that doesn't mean that everything has a price that you must pay and work for and toil. No, it's a circulation. Energy moves because of polarity, because, there's a positive and negative pole, and it goes from one to the other, and then it's drawn back again and goes again, and, there's cycles, circles, movements, vibrations. A vibration is a cycle. All manifestation is based on exchange. This is why the Hermetic arts are so important. They're the arts of exchange. Exchanging energy, exchanging life, exchanging knowledge, exchanging words, exchanging love. All of these things pertain to manifestation, how manifestation works, and what manifestation is. So as you cultivate yourself, as you open yourself up, as you become more aware, you might say more wise, you get to understand yourself and the means of exchange with everything. So you get to understand first and foremost where your hidden means of exchange are. Essentially, what you are not seeing, what you are not sensing in your life that's causing things that you don't know, have a clue why they're caused, and why you might say, oh, that's just my fate, or shit happens, or, it's random, or whatever, or it's the stars, and it may just well be, but the stars don't cause, they represent, something. So in any ways, in terms of astrology, in my honest opinion, always. But everything is a matter of exchange, no less, and this is also true in occultism, and it's true with the Dragon Djinn system. So if you are aware of the exchanges that are going on, you have a choice. You can say, okay, I'm not going to endorse this. And if I don't endorse this, then it doesn't have a hold on me. But getting out of a contract or reneging from something is not as easy as it may seem. So you may need help. In life, this system, this approach, part of the cultivation, the first level is what you might call psychological or psychic, So you will be made aware of levels of exchange that are not basically consciously chosen by you. This is what I've observed. And so as this happens, the jinn can come in, they can inform you of this. See, this is part of establishing the relationship. It's no skin off their nose for this to happen, as far as my understanding is concerned. Because, if you can avoid giving away your energy where you really don't want to give it, then you have more energy for yourself and them. Because they do not want to vampire you, because then you are not going to be able to do what you need to do to become whole, to be a paradigm, to be a living example of the paradigm of the lamp, of the archetype of the lamp, of the embodiment of physical life force, flame, and flame and life force may seem like they're together, but actually flame is ignited life force, or at least it comes out and appears, but it's also independent. Call it cosmic plasma, you might say, but it is the boundary line between life force and light itself, consciousness or spirit, kind of intermediary level. So in any ways, and light and consciousness, all of these things are embodied in the human being. You don't have the same thing in the animal kingdom, and you don't have the same thing in the plant kingdom. In fact, human beings are like walking trees. They're upright. They have a certain relationship between earth and sky that trees have, but animals do not, because they don't permanently walk on two legs. They don't have an erect spine. And we notice that many mystical systems are based on the pillar, the world tree, the spine, the tree of life. All of these things are related to our occult physiology, in my honest opinion. And you can actually see it if you study occultism. You'll see the patterns. You might go a long way to shall we say, explain them away, or say there's no proof or whatever. Come on, you can use your intuition and see it, and you can feel it, you can sense it. In any case, I'm sharing this with you because because it is to our mutual benefit. Let's put it that way. And I've said this before. It all comes around back to yours truly, as far as my personal selfish motivations are concerned. But at the same time, it goes out to everyone who is willing to participate. This is an empowering dynamic. So these jinn are crowned, and they're crowned with forces of a higher intelligence that is part of who we are, our inherent potential. It is not our ego, it is not our personality, and it is not some guardian angel hovering above us. In a way, you might consider it that way. It's more than that. However, the way that this is done is that the symbols are empowered, and so the empowerment attracts and calls what the symbol represents, and then this is weaved into the other aspect, which is the jinn. These things together, you may see, and I will try to show you, that they form a synchronistic relationships. The patterns, the way they are self-similar. In fact, the whole thing about the way the Goetia is put together, to me it was like, okay, whoever put this together, it's not like they were some occult genius. They felt, okay, this needs to be put with this makes sense to put it with this, and it's not, and I don't agree with everything. However, the jinn, my own connection with that level of awareness has communed, has conveyed that, this is synchronistic. This is, it is time for people to relate to them in this manner. Or when the thing came out, it wasn't time, but, if you look at the works of John Dee, the English occultist during the Elizabethan period, he was working with a system of magic that's a little similar to what I'm putting together. Basically, it's a functional system based on the power of the word, and the power of imagery, and the power of organized symbolism, and the system basically, he called it the angelic communications, in modern times they call it Enochian magic. And basically he put this system together based on the power of the word. And however, the entities, and it was a channeled allegedly system, they said, well, this system, this wisdom, this knowledge is not for you. It's for some future time, really. I mean, you can use it up to a certain point, obviously, and anybody can use it, but it's really meant for some future time. And this is the future time. The same thing with the Goetia. It was meant for some future time when it could be harnessed in the proper way. It's hard to express these things. I mean, really, the experiences for me are real, but it's hard to express something so allegedly outlandish and expect people to really go, oh yeah, sure, you're right, if you say so, So that's why I want to present the system step by step and to simplify it as much as possible, as much as I can, to take all of these elements together and weave them in a way that at least somebody who's drawn to it can initiate some kind of practice. And eventually, after I give as much as I can of this liberal information, and every video is building on the previous one. So hopefully I'm going to get better at this. As I'm getting better, I'll be able to teach it, and I'll be able to show you exactly what you can do with it even more. It's not a system of miracles. It is basic shamanism in a way where you forge a relationship with the entities and open up opportunities for them, help them weave one aspect to the other so they can work with you, and then you have an awakening of your own potential so the relationship goes even deeper. And that leads to your own integration. They help you become more whole, to deal with life better, and then from there you're able to practice winning the lotteries of life, shall we say. You're able to know yourself better, you're able to know not just what you think you want, but what really is out there that reflects your own potential. This sounds new agey, I know, and that's why I spent some time in the last video trying to say, look, there's some things about the so-called new age spirituality, at least some of the ideals that can be extracted, and they're not alien to occultism. And there's a lot of things in occultism that are not alien to spirituality. Mysticism and magic go together. They're natural complements. And this system is a marriage of mysticism and magic. So I'd like to end this there, but I'd like to say that in this cultivation, there's more than the psychological. There's the ability then you will have, shall we say, advisors that will help you to learn magic. If you look at the old grimoires, you can see that the spirits, part of their allure is that, well, they will lead you to magical books. They will give you these books, or they will teach you magic, or, they will give you these abilities, rhetoric, abilities you gain essentially if you were wealthy and could be educated. Rhetoric, astronomy, mathematics, the liberal arts, things like that, things that we take for granted today. But what can we then learn today that is of equivalent value, but that we don't take for granted? Deep levels of wisdom that we're in a better position to do so because we are potentially more educated. There is an internet. But what it can cultivate is discernment, to be able to go through the morass of information and to be able to pick and choose what is right for us and evaluate in a more mature way, shall we say, that, well, I can do that anyways. I'm mature, I'm this, I'm educated. It's like, well, a level of depth is given here that I cannot quite convey. But this level is cumulative. Cultivation, I use that word for a reason. The potential is there. Many people have it partially developed. And of course, I don't want to get into issues of this system is better than another system or whatever. It is what it is. Okay, let's just leave it at that and take it on its own merit. I am not making this shit up, but it is something that is very valuable in this day and age, in my honest opinion, if you are called to it. I'm not selling it right now. I may sell it in the future, who knows? But right now, I just want to share my passion for it, which is also the passion of the entities behind it, because they are on our side. They're not evil, and they're not even indifferent at this point. They want to live. They want to survive. They don't want the earth to go down the tubes. They want humanity to be able to reach a point where it can consciously interact with them, because humanity's heritage is the life force field. It is the field of the astral. It is all of that, as well as the physical. It embodies and contains all of these potentials, all of these worlds, from top to bottom, from left to right, from back to front, all of these things. And it has a center, potentially, a central flame that can awaken much deeper than the jinn themselves can embody. It becomes a point of inspiration for all of existence, in essence. Now, that's a tall order. That's like a new agey, mystical type, hoity-toity, hoo-ha, who knows what phrase. But it doesn't mean it's not real. It doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile point to move toward. Plus, there are many, many abilities here. Some of them having to do with the potential to control people's thoughts, to basically you know, to send your own version of perception out there and communicate with other people. But, you know, that would be considered black magic. But the thing is, if you want to use it, you should be mature enough to do so, and then it's not black magic, you know, because there are applications that are not harmful, you know. In fact, if people are already brainwashed, this is a good ability to have to unravel the brainwashing, to be able to identify it and to help people think more clearly.